Within the mid-1990s, the city of Baltimore was a place that very few people ever wanted to end up. It was completely overrun by drugs and violence, with certain neighborhoods being so overturned that they looked like scenes from dystopian movies. In one of those terrifying neighborhoods, there was something that most of the citizens considered a sort of bastion of light, being an open pit pork and beef stand run by local man Joe Metheny. It's so popular that there was often a line around the corner of people trying to get one of his famous burgers. What they didn't know is that a couple years after they polished off their burgers and went on their way, without thinking twice about it, that portly man who ran the barbecue stand would be arrested for killing people and cooking them into the burgers that he sold. For most serial killers, a huge portion of the motive for their crimes comes from their more formative years. Clues can be found as to why they turned out to be such a twisted person, as someone raised with loving parents and a good family doesn't generally end up on the FBI's most wanted list. The issue with Metheny's childhood is that there are conflicting reports as to how it went. By his own statement, his home life wasn't happy at all when he was younger. He claimed that his alcoholic father often abandoned the family when he was just a kid, and his mother was almost never around because she was working double shifts in the effort to look after her 6 children. His conclusion was that he was neglected, and whether or not that is true is still up for heavy debate. Either way, when he was eventually arrested for his crimes, he said that he hadn't seen any of his brothers or sisters for many years. He also said that both of his parents had died long ago. The fact of the matter is that his mother was actually alive. When his mother was questioned about it, she said that he likely simply wished she was dead and that he had pushed his family away a long time ago. She explained that his childhood wasn't actually that bad and that he was a bright kid with a good future ahead of him. She denied that he'd ever been in a foster care, where Metheny claimed that he'd been passed around through plenty of homes. Through all of these lies and unknown facts, there are a couple of truths that are verified. Metheny spent just about all of his time when he was young taking drugs, namely heroin and crack cocaine. Things first started going wrong for him when he was 6, when his father crashed his car and unfortunately died on the scene. His mother had to work hard after that to care for them, but maintains that she never abandoned or neglected her children. Despite being a large kid, Metheny was scared of violence and didn't like to fight. His mother has said he wasn't a mean kid at all. He was always polite to everybody. He was also bright at school, but instead of pursuing any career in academia, he decided to join the army. After serving for a while in Germany, he was eventually sent to Vietnam, which is where he claims he got the taste for opioids. There is some doubt as to whether or not he actually ever served in Vietnam, but it's confirmed that in the mid-70s he was already a junkie. This is when he lost all contact with his family and decided to go on his own path, road to murder. The once bright kid turned heroin and crack addict was about to turn to some very, very bad behavior. To know when his pattern of violence started, we can look towards Metheny's long confessional pieces of writing. He said that July of 1994 was when he'd finally gone mad and was deciding on doing some terrible things. Before that, he'd hung around some of the meanest streets and was friends with some generally deplorable people, but they often referred to him ironically as Tiny because of how friendly and polite he always was. That July, he got home to find that his wife and son were gone. They had taken everything of value from the house and had vanished. He says that he was a truck driver at that point and was working overtime, but eventually got home and turned on the light. When he did so, he was astounded to find that there was nothing there. He said that he didn't care much that his wife was missing because both of them had their main priority set on cocaine and heroin. What he was angry about, however, was the fact that she'd taken his child with her. 6 months later, she was apparently busted for drugs, along with the man that had become her pimp, and Metheny's child was taken into protective care. Metheny explains that he felt such an anger towards her that he decided to hunt her down in order to figure out where she and her pimp would be, and found out that they had taken to doing drugs under one particular bridge in the city. It was the Hanover Street Bridge, which had evidently become home to a sort of tent city for the homeless population. He went there in order to search for his wife with an axe in tow, but didn't find her. What he did find was, in his own words, a pair of men passed out on a stinking mattress. Those 2 men were Randall Brewer and Randy Piker, and for some reason, they made Metheny incredibly angry. They both died after he bludgeoned them with the axe he had brought. That same night, he says that he lured another woman down to the same spot with the promise of drugs. He said that he would give her as much as she wanted if she could just give him some information about his wife, but when she said that she didn't know anything about her, Metheny killed her with the same axe. Not long after, he lured another vulnerable drug addict down to the bridge and killed her too. The bodies began to pile up fairly quickly as Metheny got a handle on how he liked to kill, with one night even having 5 murders within the span of 7 hours. Metheny was actually arrested for the murders of the 2 men he had killed initially, but after spending 18 months in jail, the case was thrown out due to a lack of evidence. The cooking of the bodies. Once Metheny got out of jail, he was lucky enough to be given his old job back at a forklift company. His boss even allowed him to live on the property in a trailer, so long as he ensured that nobody broke into the factory. This isolation, however, provided Metheny with the perfect place to engage in his new hobby, which he had already begun to love so much, killing people. His general targets were young women, whom he usually targeted targeted in bars. He liked to cut up the bodies and eventually began to store some of the meats in Tupperware bowls in the freezer. He claims this is where he got the idea to start a barbecue stand on the weekends, where he would offer burgers to the occasional passerby. He claims that human meat tastes very similar to pork, and when mixed up with a bit of the real stuff, nobody could tell the difference. Evidently, that worked, considering how many people enjoyed his cooking. Once he ran out of his special meat, he went out on the prowl once again, looking for a woman that would be easy to lure back with drugs. He found this in Rita Kemper, who did come back with him, but eventually ran when he got too close for comfort. His trailer, however, was on the factory's property in the middle of nowhere, and although Kemper got a good distance away, Metheny eventually caught her and beat her. He said that he was going to kill her and bury her in the woods, which must have given her another spark of determination. Metheny claims that it was during a momentary lapse in judgment when she escaped again, but this time she was able to fully escape the grounds and call for help. Metheny knew at that moment that he was done, so he calmly gathered Kemper's clothes and belongings and walked to the front gate, which he had locked in an attempt to keep her from getting out. As he did so, a police car pulled up and an officer stepped out while pointing a gun at him, and that's where he was arrested for his heinous acts. Because Metheny had told Kemper that he was going to kill her and bury her in the woods, the police went to the location and found the bodies of several other women that he'd killed. It's likely that in total, he murdered 10 women, with most of them being drug addicts, homeless people, or prostitutes. Unfortunately, because of this, there was very little evidence for these people that could lead to him being charged, as is often the case with the less dead people, as police put it. Metheny was sentenced to death in 1998 when he was 43 years old. That sentence was later overturned because of a technicality, and he was given life without the chance of parole instead. Around 20 years into his sentence, he was found dead in his jail cell, where he would never be able to haunt another woman again. Thanks so much for watching. If you're interested in this kind of content, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps us to understand what kind of content you like, and that way we can keep making great videos for you to enjoy. Make sure to hit the bell icon so that you're always notified of our newest uploads, and we'll see you in the next one. Uploads.